Hi guys and girls, and welcome to Magic. So in this video, I'm going to teach you the basics of SQL. SQL is an acronym. It means Structured Query Language, and it's basically our weapon of choice when we're manipulating data in our relational database management systems. Examples of relational database management systems, or RDBMS, are MySQL, PostgreSQL, SQL Server, SQLite, and Oracle. Now, first things first, we're going to need a database to play around with. So you can go to aista.com, and if you haven't already signed up for Cloudlet, click sign up. There's a link in the description of this YouTube video, by the way. Or if you have previously signed up, then just click the login here and just log into Hub. Hub is the place, the factory where we are creating cloudlets, backend cloudlets, such as the one we already have here. Let me delete this guy. Sorry about that. You're not going to do this part of the video. You are going to start here with 0 cloudlets already created, unless you already have one. It doesn't really matter. You can use an already existing cloudlet if you've already created a cloudlet previously. However, if you haven't, then when you are in this screen, click Create Cloudlet. Then you see the black A here with the blue point in, and it's called Demo. Click Create on that guy. And then choose a data center, preferably something that's like physically close to you. I'm going to choose London here because I am in Cyprus, and that's not too bad in regards to TCP hop time network latency for me. So that's going to be a fairly fast cloudlet for me. If you are in other parts of the world, if you are in, for instance, San Francisco or something, you should probably choose San Jose. Or if you're on the east coast of US, you should probably choose New York. If you're in India, you should probably choose Singapore, etc. The point is, you want to create your cloudlet as physically close to your geographic location on the planet as possible. When the cloudlet is done, you click the URL here, this thing here, and this asks you to log into your cloudlets, which will open another window, at which point, if you have pop-up blocker, you might have to disable it, or click navigate to your cloudlet manually here after it has authenticated you towards your cloudlets. And then when you're inside of your cloudlet, it's going to look like this. Then you're going to start out with the first bullet point here, which is basically to install a database. And we're going to be installing Chinook. SQLite Chinook DB. This takes a little bit of a time because it needs to download several megabytes of SQL, it needs to create your database and insert thousands of records into the database. However, at the end of this thing here, we are going to be having an example SQLite database that we can play with as we see fit. And when it is done, which it will hopefully be in some few seconds from now, we are going to experiment with all 4 CRUD verbs that are related to SQL. Except in SQL, they're not CRUD verbs because they're not create, read, update, and delete. They are insert, they are select, they are update, and delete. And when the database is done, you can close this guy, and you can already start selecting records from your Chinook database. You saw when I installed Chinook, it automatically by default selected my Chinook database. So now that we have our database installed, we can already write SQL. Before we start writing the SQL though, let's take a little bit of time and scroll down and look at particular one record. You see album here and artist, for instance. These are different tables. A table, if you want an analogy for it, is kind of like an Excel file, right? Where you have like, rows and you have columns, right? This table album, for instance, has 3 columns: album ID, title, and artist ID. Album ID is an integer, means a whole number without a fractional part. This is basically a fancy way of saying strings in SQL. And yet again, this is an integer again. So remember, album ID, title, and artist. If we now write up here in the SQL pane, select asterisk from function control space on a Mac, or control space on window to get autocomplete, at which point you can use the arrow keys to navigate and choose different tables. Then we're going to choose album, and then we choose F5. If you can't find F5 on your keyboard, you can also click this guy and click execute. It's the same, basically. Then you will see we have album ID, title, and artist ID. These are the 3 columns that the album database table happens to have. And as you can see here, it's populated with, for those about to rock, we salute you, balls to the walls, AC/DC, etc., etc. These are basically albums that are provided by artists having different ID. We close this guy and we close the result, and we see that each album points, here is a foreign key, artist ID. This is the field, points to the table called artists, and its field, artist ID. So this basically what this translates into, this is called referential integrity of foreign keys. This thing here is a foreign key pointing to another table. And it basically means that every single album belongs to an artist. So no album can exist in our database unless it belongs to one specific artist. So now, as you can see in here now, when we execute this code, we get tons of records. We get 200. In fact, we get more than 200. It's just that because of security reasons, in safe mode here, it only returns the first 200 records. Now, let's say we want to look for a particular record, a needle in the haystack, so to speak. Well, then we can write space where title equal, and then we expand this. We click that for those about to rock, we salute you. We paste it in here, it automatically adds it to our clipboard. And we execute this, we only get one record. Why? Because we're only interested in the one record that has the title for those about to rock, we salute you, right? Now we can apply additional where criteria. However, before we do that, go all the way to the front of the line and select this text. Select asterisk from album without the where or anything. Make sure you select this text like I do here, and then you click execute, and then let's find another one. Let's do balls to the walls. And then at the end of our SQL, we write or title equal. And at this point, we might want to format our code a little bit such that it ends up like this. And if you don't want to write out the code and pause the video at this particular point in the video, I'm going to link to an article in the description of this YouTube video to where you can actually find the code, where I'm going to copy and paste in the code. Now, if we execute this code, we see two records. Why? Because we're returning records whose title is for those about to rock, we salute you, or balls to the walls. Now, this is called a Boolean operator, and there are two basic Boolean or logical operators or whatever. We have or and we have and. We can do and here too, but I'm not going to show it in this video. It's a subject for your own study if you want to dive into it. However, we now have the read verb from CRUD. Remember, CRUD, create, read, update, delete. Okay, select here is basically a synonym to read. So we have read capabilities in our database, right? Let's save this snippet now by clicking this thing and then click save. And then let's call our snippet tutorial 01 underscore read and click save. And you now save the snippet. If you now refresh the page or come back here like 3 months later and you click load snippet, you can actually reload this snippet and such a way have it as a reference for your future in case you want to go back and study the SQL we did in this course. So this is the read parts. Okay, now let's add a semicolon here. Let's create some spaces here. And let's do the create, insert into album. And if we remember the structure of our Chinook, now we got to select Chinook because when you refresh, it automatically selects Magic. Remember, album here has album ID. Well, that's the primary key. And since it's an integer, it's probably an auto increment field, so we can probably ignore it. However, let's do title, copy, insert into album, title, comma, artist ID, values, title can be how the tutorial worked. An artist can probably artist ID 1 probably exists somewhere. And then you can mark this SQL here like I did now. You know, highlight this piece of text, then you execute your SQL. And now if we select all from album, and we add instead where title equal, and then we select only this part and we execute it, we see all of a sudden we have inserted that record. How the tutorial will into our database. Its album ID is 348, so automatically generated by the database for us. So we now have create, we now have read. Now let's do update. Update, album, set, title equal how the new tutorial where, this one can also take a where, both update and delete can take where clauses, just like our select statement can do here. Where album ID equal 348. Now if we add a semicolon here, we execute the SQL, and then, no such, sorry, typo, then we execute this SQL. We have now updated the album record whose title, whose album ID was 348. And if we do this one again, sorry, if we do this one again, it's actually going to return nothing. Why? Because our record had its title change. So the where statement is no longer going to kick in. So at this point, we can rather do where title equal like this. Then we execute that part of the SQL, and now we see one record. And we can also change the where clause to say where album ID equal 348, like this. And now we see we get also the same record back. Then it's only delete again. So we now have create, we have read, we have update. Now all we need is delete. And delete is very, very simple. Delete from album where album ID equal 348, semicolon. Make sure you highlight this SQL. You execute only this SQL. SQL successfully executed will return no result. If we now go up here and we try to invoke this part, nothing. Why? Because we just deleted the record. Right. So now here we have create. We should probably put them in the correct order. Create. We have read. We have update, and we have delete. And we can now save this snippet. Save snippet. Tutorial 02 CRUD. And that's it. And we have now saved the snippet for later references in case you want to go back to it. Now, of course, SQL is an immensely complex subject. We have joins, we have aggregates, we have groupings, we have etc., and all of that beautiful stuff. However, for this particular video, I think we should pause, stop the tutorials and then rather create another video where we go more into aggregates and groupings and, you know, filtering and paging and things like that. So anyway, yet again, there's a link in the description of this YouTube video to where you can sign up for a free cloud and start playing around with SQL. And there's a link in the description of this YouTube video to where you can find an article where this code will be, such that you can copy and paste it into your SQL pane if you're too lazy to post the video and manually write it yourself. Thank you for watching. Remember to click like, subscribe, hit the bell, and share the video with your friends. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day.